Hey, did you know that Tesla, they've got a humongous ecosystem? They've just got so many different businesses going on and people just have no idea. And the reason for this, they've got a huge ass mission that they're working towards. Actually, what is their mission? If we have a look at their website, you can see that they've got something like this on there and it says, "Our mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. In pursuit of this goal, we build products that are designed to replace some of the planet's biggest polluters while trying to do the right thing along the way." Basically, another way of saying this is replace fossil fuels with sustainable energy as quickly as humanly possible. They started with cars, they started with EVs. With their expertise in the batteries, they expanded into energy, particularly energy storage with the Powerwall. More recently, they've been using all of the data available from the various kind of sensors that they've got to power their AI business. And basically, they need their AI business to make their products kick ass. Let's look at this from the ground up though. So, Tesla, they've got a batteries business and they literally take the lithium out of the ground and use this to put into batteries. And the reason we're going to start looking here is batteries underpin the most important parts of their business, at least today, which are vehicles and energy. Recently, Tesla, they've broken ground on their Corpus Christi lithium refinery in Texas. And the reason they've done this is because over the last few years, energy prices have absolutely spiked. They've gone through the fucking roof. And this is a huge problem for Tesla. Well, it potentially could have been if the prices didn't drop back down to the similar levels we saw in 2020. Basically, lithium is, as you might know, used for lithium-ion batteries, which are the kind of batteries that Tesla use. And yeah, lithium is a critical input for lithium-ion batteries, as the name suggests. So they need to have a long-term, secure, reliable supply of lithium so their other business areas don't get disrupted for a little stupid thing like a lithium ion price spike. Yeah, and as you may have noticed, this issue is not as pressing anymore as the prices have fallen back down to reasonable levels. There's a few reasons for this. So the price went up initially because a few years ago, so many auto manufacturers they were getting into the EV business, and they basically needed heaps of lithium to make their batteries. So that caused the price to go up. Since then, the price went up. Lots of new supply came online to meet this demand. That combined with the auto manufacturer's inability to make a profit on their vehicles. Basically, every car company, every EV company, except for Tesla and a handful of Chinese ones, are losing enormous amounts of money on their EVs. So because of that, and basically in order to not go bankrupt, most of these legacy auto manufacturers who still make internal combustion engine vehicles as their main or only source of revenue, they've scaled back their EV plans just to not go bankrupt. Back on the batteries, they've broken ground on their lithium refinery in Texas. And let's take a step back. So traditionally, lithium refining involves use of some harsh chemicals. In particular, the lithium refining often uses using sulfuric acid and sodium hydroxide are the kind of harsh chemicals that traditional lithium refineries use. Basically, it's fine, it's not an issue, except for these chemicals have a tendency to leak out into the environment, which causes a lot of environmental degradation. So Tesla, they weren't super happy with this and they wanted to do better. Tesla, they've done better. So in this Corpus Christi lithium refinery, which you can see pictured here, the main ingredient that they're using to extract the lithium from the dirt is sodium chloride, which is just salt. That's like the same salt that you eat in your food. So relatively speaking, it's very safe. Like you don't want too much salt to get on the ground as it will prevent plants from growing, but it's still much, much better than things like sulfuric acid. That's a big win for the environment. So now Tesla, they've got lithium. They're refining their own in Texas, and they've also started manufacturing their own in-house batteries. This is a vertical integration you can really start to see building up here. Traditionally, before Tesla built their in-house battery manufacturing, they sourced all of their batteries from third parties, so like Panasonic, for example. Tesla, they're developing this new 4680 battery in-house, and it's called 4680 because it's 46 millimeters in diameter, and it's 80 millimeters tall. As you can see in the image, this 4680 battery is a lot bigger than the traditional 2170 batteries that Tesla had been using up until recently. They're still using it in a lot of their cars. The 4680 at the moment is mainly used for Cybertruck, but yeah, eventually, probably I would guess most Tesla vehicles, they would go over to 4680s. The 4680s, they have a much larger internal volume compared to the 2170s. And the reason having a larger internal volume is desirable is it means more of the mass of a given cell can be used for useful energy storage. So basically, all of the internal volume is mainly used for energy storage, while the outside layer, the shell, is just like the packaging to hold it. So if you can have less packaging per unit of energy stored, overall that's going to be a more efficient system. And if you look at this from a whole kind of pack level, for an electric vehicle, you've got like the floor, the skateboard design, like the floor that's made out of the battery cells. Overall, it's going to be about 15% lighter or so. So that's a huge win. So what are we going to do with these awesome batteries? The most obvious thing you can do with them is store energy in them, which is really cool. Who would have thought you could have stored energy in a battery? I know, novel idea. Yeah, so Tesla, they've got their energy storage business. That's like the Powerwall and the Megapack. And this is excellent because this really aligns with their mission of accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. And I'll show you why that is the case in a second. But yeah, so first let's look at their energy business, which is not just storage, but also generation. So energy, as you all know, is a huge market. Everything needs energy. You cannot live a day in the modern world, at least in the developed world, without going through a huge amount of energy. Yeah, everything, like from manufacturing, food production, transportation, all needs energy. So if we can make this sustainable, that sounds like a pretty good idea to me. And Tesla thinks so too, which is why they're investing a lot of resources into this. So yeah, if we go back in time a little bit, Tesla, they introduced the Model S back in 2016 or so. And at the time, like shortly after they introduced the Model S in 2016, they also launched the Tesla Powerwall using basically the same batteries that they were using in the Model S. Powerwall is basically, you take all these batteries, you put them in a box, and you sell it to customers, and they can put this box on their wall and use it for stationary storage. So this is used for residential use cases. Most people would be using a Powerwall if they have solar panels on the roof of their house. The Powerwall is used for residential energy storage. Okay, what does that mean? So some houses, they've got solar panels on their roofs, which is excellent. You can basically get free energy from the sun if you've got solar panels. You just need to pay for the capital up front. The problem with them is they only generate power when the sun is shining. Kind of obvious, right? This is fine if you want to use the power exactly when it's generated, but often that's not the case. Most people probably won't even be at their house when the sun is shining the strongest, sort of during the middle of the day. They'll be at work, school, something like that. So what the Tesla Powerwall allows consumers to do is it lets them store the extra energy that they've generated from their solar panels during the day, and then they can use it actually when they want it. So the generation can now be matched up with the demand. And typically this will be in the morning peaks and the evening peaks when you're getting ready to go out for the day and coming home from school and work. That's probably major use case number one for Powerwall. And number two is load shifting. So you don't necessarily need to have solar panels to benefit from having a Tesla Powerwall. If you have a variable rate power plan from your utility, so basically if you have a plan where depending on what time of day you use the energy, they'll charge you different rates. Typically during the middle of the day, middle of the night, they'll charge you very cheap rates for your energy. But during the morning and evening peak hours, they will charge you an arm and a leg to use the energy. The rate is exorbitant. So if you've got a plan like that, instead of a flat rate where you've got the same price all of the time, having a Tesla Powerwall means you can charge it up during the middle of the night, say, when the power is very cheap. And then instead of going to the grid to pull out power when it's really expensive in the morning, you can just pull from your Tesla Powerwall instead. So, and basically you pocket the difference. So instead of having to spend at the high price during the morning, you can spend at the low price plus the cost of your Powerwall. And ideally that will be cheaper. So you'll overall in the long run save money. The last major use case for the Powerwall is if you live in a place where there is no grid or there is an unstable grid, it's unreliable. Basically, you can just have it as a backup. And we all know power is so important that it might very well be worth having a backup if you don't live in an area with a reliable power grid. Yeah, so that's one side of the equation, energy storage. So you can use it on demand whenever you want, regardless of when energy is generated. And the other side of the equation from a sustainable energy point of view for Tesla's mission is solar generation. So Tesla, they acquired a company called SolarCity in 2016, and basically this kickstart their generation side of their energy business. So SolarCity and then later Tesla, they basically started with traditional solar panels that you could just put on top of your roof and generate power for you. That's the first line of business for the energy generation they went into. But they also developed a novel product that's more efficient. That they thought they could improve on the traditional design of just slapping solar panels on your roof. And they developed a product called the Solar Roof. So what the Solar Roof does is it integrates the solar cells directly into the roof tiles. And this is beneficial because it eliminates the need to basically double handle. So if you're building a new house, you don't have to get one crew of people to come out and install the roof, and then a separate crew of people to come in and then just basically cover up that roof with solar panels. For having the retrofit of putting solar panels on top of an existing roof, that makes sense for existing houses. But if you need to replace the roof and you want solar, or you're building a new house and you want solar, it makes a lot of sense to combine those two and put them in at the same time. So you're more efficient from that point of view, and you can also get a lot nicer looks. So basically, here is a sample photo from Tesla's website, and you can see the roof looks a lot nicer. You wouldn't even know that this solar cells in the roof. You can only see it if you actually go up and look at the roof. So that's pretty cool. It's more efficient and it gives it a nicer look overall. Yeah, cool. So that covers the residential side of things with the Powerwall and the home solar. Tesla's also got a commercial side to their energy business. The Tesla Megapack is the main product they've got there. And what the Tesla Megapack is basically just a humongous Powerwall. So it is a huge battery for grid scale energy storage. There are two main use cases for the Megapacks. Number one is pairing Tesla Megapacks with renewable energy generation works really well. As I've mentioned before, the sun and wind don't always shine and blow. So that is a problem. If you're generating energy when no one wants it, that's a waste. You're much better off, if possible, being able to store it somewhere and then sell it later on when the price has gone up. And yeah, that's basically what you can do with a Tesla Megapack. So you can put it on your wind farm or your solar farm and store the energy that you generate there when the demand is low, and then output it to the grid later on when the demand goes up a lot. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And the second use case is to replace peaker power plants. So traditionally, there's peaker power plants that are only used during the peak when energy demand is really high, typically early morning, late evening, when people are going or haven't gotten back from their day out. And yeah, so these are usually gas-powered peaker plants. And they're able to spin up relatively quickly within half an hour or so. We're quite quick for the legacy power infrastructure. So these gas peaker power plants, they'll only run for a few hours a day when the energy is really high. The problem with this is that energy is ridiculously expensive. And that's because it's using gas, so it's a fossil fuel. So you have to keep paying for the fuel source, which is, gas is not that cheap. But also the fixed costs of building the power plant and hiring the staff and blah, 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 all of those fixed costs, they only get spread out over a very small number of hours of use. So that makes the price of energy per kilowatt hour very high. Yeah, something typically 80-90% of the time, these peaker power plants are sitting there idle. So someone has to pay for that, and that's you, the consumer, when you're using the peak electricity that is so expensive. So how do we know when is the best time to buy and sell this energy? And that is not an easy question to answer. It is quite complicated. There are a lot of different factors that you need to know. And this is sort of involves future prediction about when do people want energy and what is the future predicted demand, which is actually quite tricky to work out. But Tesla, they've got an answer to this. So they're developing a SaaS platform called Autobidder. And basically all it does is it tries to work out when is a good time to sell the energy and when is a good time to buy the energy or store the energy from whatever source you're generating it from. And it does this by trying to predict the future demand and the future generation. And basically, at a very high simplified view, when there's a mismatch between the future demand and generation prediction, that's when the Tesla Megapack will know, okay, there's excess generation here, so we'll store some very cheap energy here. oh, there's too much demand here, not enough generation. Okay, that's when we'll sell the energy back to the grid. And hopefully, if it's done its job well, it's bought at a very low price, sold at a very high price in an extreme example, and it's able to pocket the difference. Well, I think Tesla and whoever owns the Megapack, they'll split the profits there. But yeah, so that is quite a useful thing, because like otherwise you just have humans setting manual rules, like going off heuristics, which would probably work most of the time, but it won't be as efficient. So having this auto bidder software will allow owners of Megapacks to maximize the return on their investment, and it also allows everyone who uses the grid to get the most efficient use out of the resources. Like customers of the grid don't want to pay extra money if they don't need to. Like if the grid can bring the price of energy down, that's a win-win-win for everyone. Well, unless you own a really expensive power producing like peaker plant, for example, then it's a lose for you, but it's a win for everyone else. And that's what we care about. And then, so that the auto bidder, that's for the Megapacks. And Tesla's also got a version of this for residential customers. So if you've got a Tesla Powerwall, they offer a program known as a virtual power plant. So if you enroll your Powerwall in this virtual power plant, Tesla will basically do the same thing as all of the Powerwalls in your area. It will coordinate them, and then during certain times it will know, okay, we should charge up from the grid, it'll be very cheap, or we can discharge our energy now because it's like the grid's in demand and we'll be able to make killing off this high energy price, and we'll do it. So it just coordinates all of them together, and the owner either gets compensated with money or they'll get some credits towards their power bill. Cool. And then the next business to use the batteries that Tesla knows so much about is their vehicles, which is definitely the most popular thing that Tesla has at the moment. It's the most consumer facing, and that's the most consumers will be aware about the vehicles more than anything else. But I'm also going to go into like the different areas that Tesla has expanded into. So they've got an awesome charging network, and they've also got a bunch of other cool services surrounding their vehicles. So let's have a little bit look at, so Tesla was founded, let's go back to when Tesla was founded and see what their master plan was and see where we are today. So essentially when Tesla was founded, they came up with this master plan. And step one was basically produce a low volume, high cost vehicle. And then they would use the profits from that to produce a medium volume, medium cost vehicle. And then they would use the profits from that to produce a low cost, high volume vehicle. And if a company or any company like Tesla can get to the low cost, high volume electric vehicle, that's basically game over for the internal combustion engine vehicle manufacturers. And it's happening today. It's like happening before our very eyes. But yeah, so Tesla, they had their Roadster, which was a low volume, expensive luxury sports car. And that's what got Tesla kickstarted. Then they didn't quite go down to the medium cost, medium volume. They went kind of halfway in between. With their Model S and Model X vehicles. So they were still high cost, but not quite as high as a Roadster. And the production volume was a little bit higher, but it wasn't quite like mass market yet. They were still very luxury products. Then more recently, in the last few years, Tesla's released the sort of medium cost, like mid-gen vehicle platforms. And they've developed the Model 3, Model Y off this platform. Then the next step that we haven't seen yet, but this year we should know more about the next gen vehicle platform that Tesla's got. This is going to produce their kind of what's colloquially known as the Model 2, or basically their very cheap mass market car, and probably their Cybercab as well. And this is going to be their autonomous ride hailing service. So the Cybercab is going to be the vehicle that powers their autonomous ride hailing service. Once they get to this next gen vehicle, these will be cheaper than ICE vehicles in every single way. Cheaper to produce, cheaper to run, cheaper in everything. And that's just game over. That's when the legacy automakers who haven't figured out how to crack EVs and produce them profitably, they're going to die basically. No one will want them anymore. They're just going to be too expensive to run. And yeah, and the reason that the cost is falling so much is a couple of reasons. Is one, that electric vehicles, they're just conceptually a lot more simple than an internal combustion engine. For the internal combustion engine cars, they need as the name suggests, an internal combustion engine. And these engines are very complicated. Like they're lots of moving parts that need to be coordinated all to work together. And basically you're taking the fuel, the gasoline, the petrol, and burning it, having little mini explosions inside your engine, and that's then turned into mechanical motion to spin the wheels. And yeah, there's a lot that can go wrong there. If any one piece of this complicated machine stops working, then your car's broken, like it's effed, like you can't do anything else. The electric vehicles, all they need is a source of electricity, so the batteries, an electric motor. And compared to an internal combustion engine, an electric motor is just it's just night and day difference between the two of them. It's amazing, really. Like an electric motor, all it is basically just some metal with some wire wrapped around it, like from a very, like, it's a bit more complicated than that, but basically that's what it is. A bit of metal with some wire wrapped around it, and that's just amazing. So yeah, there's no moving parts here. There's basically nothing to go wrong there. Once you've got it and it's working, that's like you're hunky-dory. So yeah, so that's number one. It's just less complicated. There's less parts, this thing. And then number two, so currently, batteries, they're the most expensive part of the vehicle. They make about 30% of the cost of an electric vehicle, something like that. And the price of batteries, like the cost curve, is just falling through the floor. Like over the past decade or so, the price of these batteries has gotten so ridiculously cheap. So if we look at this chart here, 2013 compared to 2023, the price has just fallen off a cliff. Like, yeah, it's just amazing. Like the EV makers don't even have to change anything else about how their design works. They can just use the same design, put cheaper batteries in it, and boom, they save so much money, and they can pass those savings on to the consumer. And then I guess the other part is you just need electricity to charge these batteries, and that is a lot cheaper than gas, like gasoline, petrol. Like petrol is very expensive in most of the world. Even in places like the United States where petrol is very cheap, it's still getting very expensive there. It just cannot compete with electricity. Even from expensive sources, electricity is still by far the superior option. Cool. So yeah, so they've got their vehicles, they're producing them at scale, and the prices just keep falling through the floor every single year. And Tesla's going to expand that even more over time. But there's also a few other nuances about their vehicle business that people may not know. So traditionally, if you want to buy a vehicle, you need to go to a dealership. So the old legacy automakers, they don't sell their vehicles directly to customers, which is a bit weird. They go through a dealership network. So there's basically, in many places around the world, it's by law, these auto manufacturers need to go through a middleman. And what do we know is middlemen, they jack the price up. Like they need to make a living too somehow, which is fair enough. So the only way they can do it is add on extra costs and extra fees and things of that nature when you're buying through a dealership. So initially when Tesla started going direct to customers, people, I think they thought this would have been a disadvantage because they had to set up a distribution network from scratch. They didn't have any ways of getting these vehicles into customers' hands at scale effectively. So they needed to set up all of these showrooms around the place and ways of getting these vehicles delivered into customers' hands. But over time, it's really shown that this is definitely the superior way to sell electric vehicles. Like they have more control over the customer experience. They can do things like, you can just go onto Tesla's website and just buy a car like you would buy something from Amazon, which sounds like, oh yeah, of course, like you should just be able to do that with everything. We live in the 21st century. Why can I not go and buy my Ford or Toyota from their website? Well, it's because you can't buy it directly from them. You need to go to a dealer, and they are not a unified system. So every dealership works a little bit differently, and they're kind of competitors to each other. So they don't want to have one kind of unified central experience. And I guess the other problem with the dealership model is it just doesn't really work, at least how it's set up today for electric vehicles. The dealership model, they don't actually make most of their money from selling vehicles to customers, which you might think. They make most of their money from other things like insurance or like doing the auto loan, or when you bring your car back to the dealership for servicing or repairs if you've been in an accident or something like that. Whereas if you compare internal combustion engines to EVs, like EVs basically don't need any maintenance. I mean, they need some, but compared to an internal combustion engine, they don't need any. Like you don't need an oil change in an EV, for example. Like, well, what would you do with the oil? Where would you put it? Like essentially all you need to do for your EV is put new tires in, new window wiper blades, some washer fluid, and then you're good to go. Unless you get into some kind of crash or something. So the dealership model doesn't quite work with EVs because they don't have as many opportunities to engage with their customers once they've sold them the car for servicing and things like that. Yeah, basically just going to direct to customer is better. The customers have a better experience. They get cheaper. They don't have to have extra fees and whatnot when selling to middlemen, and they get a better service because Tesla has a real incentive to give them good service so they become repeat customers and come back. Whereas the dealerships don't necessarily have the same incentives there. So Tesla, they're also in a really unique position when it comes to being able to sell other services to their customers, like insurance, for example. So you need insurance on your car in case something goes wrong, gets stolen, gets in a crash, blah, blah, blah. The way insurance works is the insurance company try and get as much data about you as possible. And then with that, they try and work out the risk that you are to insure. So if you're very young, for example, you might be more likely to get into an accident, so they'll charge you a higher rate. Or if you've had your license taken away from you before in the past, then you've probably done something bad, so they'll give you higher rates because you're going to be a more risky customer. You're more likely to need to make a claim against your insurance policy. So the idea goes that Tesla, that they've got all this extra data, they've got so many sensors about your car, they know how you drive it, if you're a good driver or not, things like that. They'll be able to work out more accurately what kind of a risk you pose to them. And if they can do that, they can charge you lower rates, basically, because they can kind of screen out the very high risk drivers and either not insure them or charge them very high rates so they don't want to be insured with Tesla. And with that, most customers will be able to get cheaper premiums. So overall, they'll get a better service. Like basically, that's the only thing you care about with insurance. Like you just want it to be as cheap as possible. I guess you also care about making claims, but most people probably don't think about that because they probably in practice will never need to make a claim. Some will, but most won't. So Tesla's quite unique in this regard. Like basically most other OEMs, they don't have these kind of sensors on the car, so they won't be able to collect as much data and offer the same kind of insurance program with the same kind of benefits. Finally, the other unique thing about Tesla vehicles is they've also got the Tesla supercharging network. So when the Model S launched, there was no other public charging infrastructure to speak of. And so for day-to-day driving, this wasn't a problem because you could just charge your vehicle at home. Like when you got home, just plug it in, charge it overnight, boom, done, you're ready for the next day. The only time when this wouldn't work is if you're going on like a long road trip or something away from your house and you're not going to be able to make it back in time at night to charge it up there. So Tesla, they launched the supercharging network to get around this problem. And over time, they were the first to kind of start building out a EV charging network at scale. Like they did this as a loss leader so they could attract people to buy their Model S. And it has turned out it has paid off for them a lot. So much so that they've now got the largest EV charging network in the world by far. And I don't think it's even close when it comes to second place. But they've also, because of their other businesses that they're in, energy in particular, they have some other competitive advantages when it comes to offering excellent supercharging experience. As you can see in this picture here, there's like a solar canopy above the superchargers. So that gives drivers shade while they're charging the vehicles, which is really nice. Gives them shelter if it's raining. But it also lets Tesla generate basically free energy. They need to pay the cost of the capital upfront to build the solar panels. But once they've done that, they've got the free energy generation anytime the sun is shining. And so then Tesla's basically able to take this kind of free energy that they're generating and sell it to customers at higher rates when they come to the supercharger and charge up. Combine this with a Tesla Megapack, and yeah, you are golden. Like you don't even necessarily have anyone charging there when the sun's shining. You can store this energy in a Megapack, or you don't even need the solar panels. You can pull from the grid in the middle of the night when the energy is very cheap and store it in your Megapack until like during the day when some customers come and they want to charge their vehicles at the supercharger. Tesla can get the cheap or free energy and then sell it to customers at much higher price. So this is energy arbitrage again, but instead of at a grid scale, this is on their supercharging scale for when customers want to charge their vehicles. So it's pretty neat. And finally, the other thing that makes Tesla unique is they're probably the best real-world AI company at the moment. They have one of the most compelling AI-based products, like the most useful. And this is their full self-driving technology. So since 2009, every single Tesla vehicle sold is theoretically capable of full self-driving. Why do I say theoretically? That's because full self-driving is not finished yet. It's not actually full self-driving. You still need a human in the loop to supervise it. Like it works pretty well most of the time, but sometimes it'll do something silly or it won't understand what to do. So the human driver will need to take over. But it is theoretically capable of full self-driving is because you just need to solve the brain problem. Like the car just needs to understand the world better so it can understand what to do. I can understand the world better and then come up with a plan of how to drive. That's what needs to improve. Like it already has a perfectly good world model. So the Teslas, they have like 8 cameras around them. These 8 cameras, like if you compare it to a human, they're analogous to a human's eyes. We've only got 2 eyes, and that's plenty for us to like look around and see, I can sense the world and make a world model of what's happening immediately around the car when we're driving. So Tesla, it's got 8 should be able to have superhuman driving abilities if it can get the brain sorted out, like the full self-driving software bit. Using its onboard computer, which is like its brain, it's then able to take in the video data from these cameras, work out a plan of what it should do, and then it will turn this into controls. So this will be like acceleration, braking, steering, indicators, things like that. So Tesla, the full self-driving is not perfect yet, but it's getting a lot better. And I hear you ask, like, how is it getting better? It is just a dumb computer, right? So how is it getting better? I hear you ask. And this is where Tesla's got their FSD feedback flywheel. Basically, how this works is you're driving along in your Tesla, you've got full self-driving engaged, so you're just supervising the car, making sure it's doing everything correctly. Then you notice the car's doing something it's not supposed to. There's a human on the middle of the road. Your car's supposed to stop. It's not stopping, so you slam on the brakes. And that's basically an FSD intervention. You're intervening, you're taking over control. And so the FSD system can recognize, okay, I was doing something there that I wasn't supposed to have been doing. So I'll note this down. And what it does is it takes the video footage and like the surrounding events, it sends this back up to Tesla. Then Tesla, with their Dojo supercomputer, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, it will label this clip, and so labeling the clip is where it will kind of recognize all the objects in it and like say, this is an example of what you shouldn't do or something like that. And then they'll come up with the examples of what you should do in situations like that, and then use their Dojo supercomputer to retrain FSD model. And now this should be better than the version just before. They will then release this back out to their Tesla fleet, and all of the Teslas will be just a little bit better at full self-driving. They'll be able to handle slightly more cases than they could have in their previous version. Now, you just repeat this cycle indefinitely, ad nauseum, and eventually you should be able to get to a full self-driving car. And because this is an AI-based system, we know that AI models do well the more data you give it. So, for example, if you think about ChatGPT, we know the earlier versions, ChatGPT 3.5, they were trained on way less data than ChatGPT 4, for example. And ChatGPT 4 is miles better at outputting useful text than ChatGPT 3. And that's mainly because of the extra data that it was trained on. And in this case, to make it analogous to the full self-driving, Tesla, they've got by far the most cars on the world doing real-world driving with this FSD system. So they're collecting the most data over the most number of miles. So they'll be able to have the most number of edge cases out of anyone. So they'll be able to get to full self-driving the fastest. Like recently, for example, I know Tesla, they crossed about 1 billion miles driven with full self-driving, which it doesn't even come close to the nearest competitor, which I think is like Waymo or Cruise, and they've only got a few million miles driven. And so 1 billion, that's a huge difference. So this is basically Tesla's fleet advantage. They've got the biggest fleet getting the most data. So they should have the fastest flywheel to be able to solve full self-driving. And so I mentioned the Dojo supercomputer. So basically Tesla, they developed a computer chip to go inside their vehicles, the full self-driving computer. And that works really well, we know, because many Teslas have had it for years, and it does a great job at being power efficient and then also coming up, like processing the video data and coming up with a plan of how it should drive through the world. Tesla's also made another custom chip for their data centers, for their Dojo supercomputer, so they can actually like ingest video, label it, and train their new models. Dojo is not only made with the custom Tesla chips, they also use third-party chips like the NVIDIA H100s, for example. This just shows you how much resources Tesla's putting into their Dojo supercomputer, so they can really tackle this full self-driving problem. So Tesla is a huge customer. I think they're one of the top customers of buying NVIDIA's H100 chips, which is the brand new chips that NVIDIA has released within the last 6 months, a year. And they're kind of state of the art for AI training. And just looking forwards into the future, Tesla, they've started working on a humanoid robot. They call this the Optimus bot. And basically, this is kind of similar from a first principles point of view to their cars. Their cars are just robots on wheels. They're big robots on wheels, but they are robots on wheels, and they've got 4 wheels. And a humanoid robot is a smaller robot not on wheels, but on limbs. They've got 2 arms, 2 legs, just like a human. And using the full self-driving model, that's basically a model of the world. Like it's a world model, but focusing on the road network. So in order to get a useful humanoid robot, it needs to understand the world around it. Tesla, they're going to be able to extend their full self-driving model, and using the same processes, using the Dojo supercomputer, they're going to be able to train it to do tasks in like human environments. So that's like factories, restaurants, homes, things like that. And Tesla has said, and they've actually released videos, you can see one on screen, of the Tesla bot doing things in a factory. And the idea is it'll be able to start doing very simple tasks like moving things from A to B, taking them out of a box, putting them in a tray, something like that. Something useful, but very boring and repetitive in a factory. And then using this Tesla, we'll be able to get basically free labor. It won't be free. It'll be very cheap. You just need to pay the cost of the robot, and there might be 25, 30,000 US dollars. And the cost of electricity to run it. And these can run basically 8 hours a day more. And that's going to be way more competitive than human labor. So the Tesla Optimus bot will be able to do things much more cheaply, for at least for the things that it can do than humans. Like it'll take a while before it'll be able to replace humans, but for simple tasks like moving things from A to B, that's going to be way better to use a Tesla bot, like an Optimus bot, than paying a human to do it. But in summary, Tesla, they've got a huge, complicated ecosystem if you look at it. But if you spend a little bit more time looking at it in fine detail, you can see they've got a few core businesses that really drive their mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And these are the batteries that power their storage and vehicle business. And they're really going all in on vertical integration. Like, as you can see, they're literally digging dirt up from the ground. They're getting the dirt and they're extracting the lithium from it so they can make batteries to power their energy storage and their electric vehicles. And Tesla, they're a really big smart technology company. So they've got excellent sensors on all of their products, in particular their vehicles. And using this data, they're able to feed AI models in the huge flywheel that we saw before. And they're working towards really awesome things, full self-driving. Just imagine full self-driving. That is going to be such a huge difference to the world. How many lives are going to be saved because of this technology? How much time is going to be saved where people don't have to waste their life just focusing on driving their car, getting stuck in traffic jams? It's going to be this full self-driving technology. It's going to profoundly change the world. It's going to be awesome. Anyway, thank you for watching. I do really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please do something awesome with the rest of your day.